Hi, I'm Brian Montgomery, head of West Coast partnerships over at Overtime. I'm sitting with Beverly Jackson, the VP of brand and product marketing over at Zillow. We're here to talk about, bringing, a new foundation to the next generation of home buyers and how Zillow is doing that here in the industry today. So I think it's really interesting, actually, given that they chose us to speak with each other from seemingly unrelated industries and companies. But funny enough, many people don't know about Overtime is there's many parts of our business, from the social world to our leagues that have been gaining prominence over the past couple of years, as well as we've been developing some of the most viewed and successful social content that exists on YouTube, actually, for some time. One of our shows in particular, My House, chronicles young athletes who have just finished the draft. They've just been brought to the NFL, the NBA, and they're on their way to buy their first home. Mm-hmm. And this is more than an MTV crib show, which I love that show, by the way. But ultimately, showing the experience and the journey around it that so many young people are about to step into. Yep. And many of them, the 20 to 35-year-olds, who are entering the housing market for the first time. So it's a really unique kind of synergy that probably wouldn't have known otherwise.
I think what's so interesting is that as we talk to our agency and our media partners, everyone tells us about that journey for athletes specifically, about that first home purchase and what do they do with all that money, and where you live becomes for their safety and their status, and just a whole lot of other tax implications, all the things that, sort of aren't obvious to regular first-time home buyers, but everybody's fascinated with the journey for what it means for a young athlete who's just got the draft, just signed the big contract, just moved to the, to the next level of their superstardom. Mm-hmm. Everybody talks about that, but that process it might be different in terms of like what you're actually buying. The process is still super hard and very complicated, which is what led Zillow to the concept of the housing super app.
No, that's great. And I think when we think about this generation in particular, they are very much attuned to the literacy of their financial decisions. They want more information and they're really craving that. You mentioned your super app. How is that coming into the fold with some of your new product innovations?
So I think that's really the key to this whole thing, is what we recognized in the idea of like building a housing super app was that we have great agents and you need an amazing agent to buy a home. We have touring. Everybody needs to tour the house. Everybody needs to see it. Everybody needs to be able to see if it's the right house for them, whether they're a superstar athlete or just, a regular marketing executive or a computer programmer or a mom who's looking for a house. The reality is that you want to see the house, you want to tour it. And then you need to be able to figure out what you can afford, and then you need to get approved for the loan, and then you need to get that all done. So the Housing Super App attempts to bring that all together. And this is even more important for that millennial home buyer, because they need all of those pieces. They want all of those pieces to be seamless, to be frictionless, to be easy enough for them to be able to ingest it into their day-to-day habits. Financial literacy and what you can afford, how much you can afford, is a big part of that.
Absolutely. And if you wouldn't mind, can you give a couple examples of what some of those pieces are that you're bringing in, just like how that exists and lives within the super app?
Sure. One example is real-time touring. And so in some of our markets, what we've started to introduce is this concept of touring, that you go into the app and you request a tour without ever speaking to anyone. And that's one example of it, right? On another side, on our agent side of the business, we're putting in these sort of real-time, not real-time, clear. On the agent side of the business, what we're looking to do is also make it easier for home buyers when they're actually looking at a house to see what the house looks like, to be able to take a look at these little reactive dots on a map and see where they are in the house and help themselves to understand what the room looks like, how the house flows, where it moves, that sort of stuff, right? The other thing is these sort of mortgage calculators that take into consideration using an algorithm and using technology, back-end technology, AI in some instances, to figure out what is it that you can afford based on your personal financial circumstances. Because it is not just about, is the process hard, are interest rates high, is there enough inventory? Beyond all of that is, what can you afford? And so those are tools that are a part of the process that are available to users in the app. And given that we have so many visitors that come to the app and the website, and 50% of people start their home buying journey on the app, we want to make sure that those tools are ever present and prominent in their discovery process.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of the same themes that we see across the industry, where we have a generation that has been raised on digital. They're used to it on demand, and ultimately we have to move to a function that suffices those needs, because that's
right.
ultimately our habits. That's what we're used to.
That's exactly right. And so it becomes a utility, right? And so at some point, the Housing Super App will become a realized utility for that buyer. And so just like, you can't imagine a time before Zillow when you didn't know how much a house cost, when you didn't know if it was on the market or not, when you couldn't sit in your home in California and look into North Carolina and see what was available, or sit in Atlanta and figure out what's in Chicago. The Zillow product actually brought that to bear. And then being able to have a sense of like what your house was worth with like the Zestimate, those are tools that have now become a utility. And what Zillow's looking to do is to make some of those things like real-time touring, easy to find an agent that knows your neighborhood, being able to like tour a house from your app, looking to make some of those really obvious to people, including being able to figure out what you can afford and applying for and getting pre-qualified and pre-approved for that loan product. No,
that's great. And it's one of those processes that we all take for granted almost, given 20 years ago, this was a long, arduous, you have to have your guy who's going to do that for you.
Your guy or your gal, exactly, right? And now, if you are new to the process, you think about it for a second. If you're a first-time home buyer and you have never done the process before, you don't have a guy or a gal. Like, you really do need to have somebody that you can trust, and people trust the Zillow product. They trust the Zillow service. And so if Zillow recommends like a best of Zillow realtor to you, you have more, that realtor comes with a level of credibility that seems really cool and an easy place to start the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And just total side note, it's so interesting how Zillow itself, as a brand, that noun, right? It's also become a verb in a lot of sense. I myself, I'm actually in the market, and it's funny when people tell me, did you Zillow it?
That's right.
Like, did you Google it? Like, so that you're your own household thing at that point. Right. So it's really amazing.
I think that's the thing that is sort of exciting about what you do and the work that you do in terms of like making the content available to people and understandable, using social to do that. Because when something becomes a part of culture, like Zillowing becomes a verb, you expect to see that translated into the platforms that will deliver that in the most authentic, credible way. And social plays such a big part of that, especially for us as we think about where the brand goes next and how we tell the story.
Absolutely. And even thinking about that next story, I mean, we're sitting here, we're 7 stories up above the Formula One racetrack. And you think about how many brands here that we're listening to, and all their big activations, how does Zillow approach, getting involved in big moments like this, or culture, or sports? Like, kind of, what's your POV on that?
Sure. I think because we have identified the millennial homebuyer as an important target for us, an important audience for us, we want to be places where that target audience is. And we know from the research and the insights that we've seen that millennials love live sports, and whether it's the NBA or whether it's the NHL or whether it's 7 stories above the famous Las Vegas Strip, watching cars take 52 laps at 250 miles per hour. This is the moment, these are the times where this audience is. And so if we can find the right threaded message and the right context and the right platform and the right channels, we believe that we can do breakthrough work with this audience. And so whether it's something as simple as making sure that we're doing the right media buy for like linear television, or making sure that we're partnered with the right company that's going to get us into the right events, something as simple as that. And so that's now all the focus of where we think about from a marketing and branding perspective. It's like, we have this beloved, iconic audience. Everybody knows Zillow, everybody loves it, everybody knows what to do. So they know to go, when they're looking for a house, to go Zillow it. But like, how do we make sure that we're in the right places culturally that resonate with the audience that's right for us? And then we got to get the message right. So it's not just enough to be here right now, but it's how do we tell that story on YouTube? How do we tell that story on TikTok? How do we tell that story on Facebook and Instagram? How do we show up in a way that's authentic to those platforms natively, but that is breakthrough for all the other brands that are out there too?
No, I love it. And we've talked about Zillow and Overtime, but when you look at your peers in the space, who are some standouts where you're like, you know what, they've done a really great job, or even whether it's here in Las Vegas or anywhere else in the market?
Sure. I think, obviously I have done a lot of work in sort of the brand and product space with some really cool and exciting opportunities. One of the ones that we heard from today, which I think they're doing a great job because it's a 100-year-old brand. And how do you break through? How do you stay relevant? And so when the vice president of marketing for Hilton was talking, his story resonated with me so much. It's like his product spoils every night. He's got those rooms have to be sold over again. And the way they actually talk about positioning themselves on social in such a credible, cool way is really quite lovely. I like that a lot. I think that there's a lot to be learned from that. I'm a big fan of Chrome and the way Google shows up with that product. I'm thinking about it because I can see their car here, and so they're here. But they don't do a lot of loud and proud marketing. What they do is so surgical and specific to the audience they're trying to talk to. I love the Chrome work. I think it's authentic to their brand. As someone who lives here in Las Vegas and having seen the hype of Formula One for the last 18 months, another brand that I'm really impressed with of how they have embraced the Formula One energy is Heineken, the silver product. If you're a local here, I didn't even know what Heineken Silver was. I didn't know, and I saw it everywhere. I just saw it integrated into things. And one of the things they've done here is a couple months ago at one of the local casinos for locals to sort of pull them into the ecosystem, Heineken was giving out these local packages of Heineken Silver. I still didn't know what it was. And then I saw it and I was like, oh, so it's 0-calorie beer, and it's actually really cool. And the marketing, the positioning, the associations, the partnerships, how they've made it easy for locals here in town to embrace Heineken's celebration of Formula One. It's pretty cool.
No, it's amazing. Well,
I think you also have to shout out all of the hotel companies here because they've done an amazing job.
Absolutely.
These activations are next level, and I fully expect to see them on their socials. So if I don't see it on their socials, then I won't know if it really happened, right?
Absolutely. And they're setting a high bar for next year.
That's exactly right. The Super Bowl's coming.
Yeah, coming up. So, well, thank you so much, Beverly. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Brian. It's my pleasure. Appreciate it so much. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely.